Hello, kidney warriors. James here from Dadvice TV, your online kidney health coach. And this is episode number 317 of Dadvice TV, helping you live better, live longer while you happen to have kidney disease. Now, this is a special episode that we do once a month where we have a great, amazing, always helpful renal dietitian here to help answer your questions. So if you've got questions about the kidney diet, you're wondering, hey, can I have this? Can a person normally eat this? What I got to watch out for that? Go ahead and type it in the question or in the comments here, and we will see them right here. Now, you probably noticed, and I'll just get this out of the way real quick, my voice is a little scratchy. For those of you that tuned into the call 4 weeks ago, I got COVID for the very first time. 4 years without getting it, and it got me. And it was rough. I lost my voice for about 2.5 weeks, and then it slowly started coming back. It's close to normal. I can't sing my karaoke, so I'm heartbroken for that. But at least I can have a conversation and people understand me. So let's go ahead and we're going to jump into today's topic, which is Ask the Renal Dietitian. And for those of you that are out there that are not yet working with a renal dietitian, trust me, this is the number one thing that helped me to feel in control, and it relieves so much stress from being diagnosed with kidney disease and being afraid to eat. I didn't know what I could have, and I didn't want to make things worse. But once I started working with a renal dietitian, the world just changed. It was like the waters parted and my future was clear. I was no longer afraid of food, and now I enjoy going out with coworkers, going out with friends. So welcome to our show, my co-host from plantpoweredkidneys.com, which is an amazing website and an amazing Facebook group you all should belong to. Please say hello to renal dietitian Jen Hernandez. Hey, Jen.
Hi, James. Hi, everybody. Happy October. James, I'm hearing your voice breaks my heart. That is a really rough thing for you to be going through. So hopefully I can help answer questions tonight, take some of the talking off of your plate, and I will be more than happy to take care of that for you tonight here on Dadvice
Awesome.
TV. So, for those of you who have not met me before, my name is Jen Hernandez. I am a registered dietitian that specializes in kidney nutrition. That's been the majority of my 10 years as a registered dietitian, helping all stages, situations, working in dialysis, CKD, transplant, all over it, you name it. And my favorite thing has been with Plant Powered Kidneys and helping people eat better to protect their kidneys so that they don't have to go down this like inevitable must go down dialysis pathway. In fact, we find a lot of our students, a lot of our clients are able to make really, really good changes, particularly in the earlier stages of CKD, to where they're protecting their kidney function so well that their doctors sign off and say, you know what, I'll see you in a year, or you know what, just go back to your primary doctor. You don't need nephrology right now. We see a lot of great results and in all kinds of different ways. So I love doing this for Plant Powered Kidneys. And if you're interested in learning more about us, you can check out our website. We have nearly 100 blog articles that cover all different types of questions related to a renal diet. We have information about working with our dietitians, including myself. We have information about our course, our classes, all kinds of things there. So definitely check out our website at plantpoweredkidneys.com. And as James mentioned, we are on social media. We have a private Facebook group that has over 12,000 people. I was just in there earlier this afternoon. Yeah, we were going through and I was answering some questions and taking care of things that people were submitting. We do weekly Q&As there as well. I will share information about articles. We'll talk about really like the evidence and the information behind what a renal diet is. It's not gimmicks. It's not fads. It's not buy this certain supplement. If anything, I'm really saying, okay, be careful with supplements. You really want to watch out for those. So we talk about how to eat better, and it's really motivational and inspiring for our members in this private group that are able to connect with one another and just be able to not feel alone and understand that there are so many different pathways when it comes to kidney disease. So we are more than happy to support you there. You can also find us on Instagram and then our Facebook page as well for Plant Powered Kidneys. So all of that being said, I see questions already starting to pop, and I would love to start getting to them.
All right, here we go from Southern Lady Brown. How much fruit should a kidney patient eat daily, and which fruits, in your opinion, are best?
So the daily recommendations for fruit would be anywhere from 2 to 5+ servings a day. Now, when it comes to the best fruit or which ones should you have, honestly, they all have their own pros. They all have their own benefits, but ultimately it is the question of what do you like to eat? What do you enjoy having as your fruit for a meal or for a snack or however you enjoy it? Because whatever you enjoy, that's a really good benefit that's unique to you because you actually enjoy that fruit. And the renal diet is really not about forcing certain types of foods on anybody. It might be changing the portions. It might be making some modifications on what a plate looks like by adding more fruits and vegetables. But I don't really like picking a specific fruit to say, oh, this one's better than the others. Some benefits, I would say, for different fruits, let's say for berries, for example, berries are typically lower potassium options. So that means even people who have potassium restrictions in their diet can easily include berries in their diet. Berries have antioxidants. They can be rich in fiber. They have great vitamins like vitamin C. So they're very, very nutritious and a wonderful addition to a diet. You can add them into yogurts. You can put them in smoothies. You can add them to salads. They're very, very versatile, which also makes them really nice to include in the diet. Now, bananas are something that are very villainized or vilified. There you go, vilified.
Them and
In
avocados.
Yeah, and avocados. These are vilified in a renal diet because people, well, I mean, even myself as a renal dietitian years ago, we used to think that a kidney patient couldn't have these things because of the potassium. But what we know now, what the research shows us, is that the potassium from the diet doesn't necessarily equate or even relate to the potassium in our bloodstream. So having these foods that are rich in potassium can give us benefits like helping with blood pressure control. Bananas also are a source of prebiotics because of the fiber content in there. So that's another benefit that you can have from them. And they have some B vitamins in there too. So it's really good to have this variety of think differences in colors that provide more nutrients across the spectrum. What kind of different colors can we get on the plate? So yeah, bananas, avocados are a fruit and a good one to include as well because they are a healthy fat source, which is really, really fantastic. I was actually just talking with the client earlier this afternoon saying, eat more avocados. We got to get more potassium in there. I was talking to 2 clients about this. Now that I'm thinking about it, pushing potassium, it's very, very important for a renal diet. I know that one of the biggest challenges is this shift in mindset from all of the old diet information that's always been low and no potassium. But I really encourage you to talk with your healthcare team about potassium in your diet and in your situation to find out what's the optimal goal for you. Is it to eat more potassium for kidney protective reasons? Is it to eat a moderate amount to make sure that you are keeping an eye on medications that could be impacting it? Like, what is the goal? What is the plan? But it's no longer a concept of just avoiding potassium simply because you have kidney disease. That is outdated. That has been overruled by science. Not a thing anymore. Don't let them just say, oh, it's just because you have kidney disease. That is not a good enough answer. They need to think harder as a practitioner.
And I'll tell you,
I'll
this
step
last
off of
weekend,
my potassium soapbox now.
yeah, this last weekend, I had some avocado toast and I absolutely love it.
So good. I love avocado toast with the everything but the bagel, and then even some like edamame or some chili
Oh.
crisp, like some other kind of texture and flavors. It's a really fun way to have a breakfast or even a lunch or a snack. It's a good option.
Yeah. Now, one thing you mentioned, I want to help explain to people out there who may be here for the first time. You mentioned if you have a restriction, and that just because you have kidney disease doesn't mean you automatically need to have a restriction of potassium. For a kidney patient, who should tell them that they need to restrict something?
So it needs to come from your doctor or ideally a dietitian. And the reason I say that is because doctors aren't always up to date on the guidelines. And so doctors too will do blanket diet statements. And I know they mean well because they are saying it from from a protective standpoint, but it's not necessarily the case. And what I see so often is somebody hears I can't have potassium and they aim for 0 milligrams of potassium. They're cutting down so much. And when you cut down so much on such an important nutrient, you are also unintentionally, but you are still potentially cutting down on other nutrients that are also associated with foods that are rich in potassium, like magnesium, for example. Magnesium is another very important nutrient for us, but many people don't get enough of it because of this byproduct of reducing potassium in the diet. So you want to clarify with your healthcare provider about what it is for a lower potassium diet. And again, if a doctor does talk with you about a lower potassium diet, my recommendation is always to just ask why. Ask questions, keep asking why to get an understanding of what is the justification? What are we looking at? Is it there are medications that can alter the potassium in the blood, which then might relay a doctor to say, be careful with your potassium in your diet. And that is a possibility that can happen. It doesn't happen as often as people think it happens, but it's a possibility. And so in those situations, then it's another question of, okay, how much potassium should I be having? Not just avoid potassium, because again, that is a key problem, and it's so risky to create more malnutrition, more holes. And again, like the end result can be not having better kidney function, not having better kidney health or overall health. It just creates other problems down the road because of this malnutrition that has come from severely restricting on this one nutrient that creates a cascade of problems. So make sure you clarify. And honestly, if your doctor is saying, yes, you need to be on a low potassium diet, then I do highly recommend working with a renal dietitian who can help guide you and teach you what you can and should eat and help keep an eye on things. And maybe they can also be the person to track your labs and help get you to eat more potassium while keeping your labs in range. And I've done that for many clients who have come to me on a very low potassium diet, and we just kind of slowly worked at increasing potassium, but still kept their potassium levels in range. So they had more flexibility. So it's very much a possibility, even with a lower potassium diet, but having the right help, the right support, and understanding more about what's going on with potassium is really, really key to understanding this very complex part of a renal diet.
Yeah, I'll tell you, for me personally, I was scared to death when I first got diagnosed. I asked for a renal dietitian, and you know the story. You and I met over this. The one who saw me in the ICU had 5 minutes to look over my stuff. Didn't really give me anything helpful, but she had no time to look at my stuff. And she just handed me some different sheets. Here's for a heart attack. Here's for kidney. And they conflicted with each other. But when I actually got to sit down with the dietitian, take time, talk to them, the education they gave me, the tools they gave me truly changed my trajectory of living with kidney disease. I was no longer afraid of anything. I've told this story before. The very first day home, my wife, I'm like, okay, I can't have any sodium. 0 sodium. How I got 0, I don't know. My wife tried to make chili and with no sodium. It was the worst tasting chili ever. And I tried so hard to have 0 sodium. And when I went to the doctor, I was having nerve issues, these tingling things, and my sodium was too low. And it's always about that balance. Restriction, for example, with sodium was don't get too much sodium, James. Your body needs it. You got to find out where you should be. And a dietitian helped me to understand that and then look at food based on what's in this food. Okay, this has got this much sodium, this much fiber. What are my targets? Does this keep me on track? Does this, put me over my limit, my allowance of something? And all that came from a dietitian, and it made food fun again. And then, of course, I've learned how to make so many colorful, amazing things. And I've been cooking since I got sick. I couldn't go out. I've been cooking a lot more at home, and it's been a lot of fun. And I'll tell you, I've gone through so many vegetables.
Yeah.
And on Amazon, I order like spiralizers and things like that. I'm like, I'm going to have a lot of fun and make food that looks cool, not just colorful.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah. It's fun to experiment and try new recipes, even just like a new ingredient, like adding one thing to your go-to recipe. It can really just change things and make it so much better.
Yeah. All right. Here's a question from Lynn. Lynn is asking, what about coconut? And I guess she's CKD 3A. So 3A is a fairly good, healthy kidney. It's not perfect, but boy, I would love to be 3A. Well, any advice or tips you have adding coconut to her diet?
Yeah, I saw the 3A part and I was like, is this like a special kind of coconut? Like, are there different types of but yeah, that's good that you picked up on that right away because it took me a second. I was trying to think of a special coconut. So coconut can be a good addition to a renal diet. It does have a lot of saturated fats. Like think coconut oil is primarily saturated fats, which we do want to be careful with. We don't want to have a ton of, but it is still something that we can include in the diet. And coconut milk is a great plant-based milk alternative. So I think that is all like the coconut products and things that come from coconut are great options. The coconut meat is good. So all good options. I will say one caveat is just to know, and this probably sounds very contradicting to like my whole soapbox thing that I just got off of, but just know that coconut water is very high in potassium. So I did have a patient when I worked in dialysis back in Hawaii. I had a patient who would guzzle coconut water. Like he thought that was the hydrating thing to do and that was going to be helpful. And his potassium was through the roof. Now, dialysis is a different situation where you have very, very minimal kidney function to help balance that. So that's that's an alternative example, but just know that coconut water is like in almost 1,000 milligrams of potassium for like a small, like a carton of it. But I do like coconut and using coconut within a diet, within any part of renal diet. So I'm all good for it. Absolutely.
Awesome. Now here's a question from James. His GFR is 54 and he's 67 years old. So the 54, Dr. Wazansky would say that's probably pretty close to normal for that age. He doesn't mention if there's any protein in his urine. I know that's the question Dr. Wazansky would ask is there protein in the urine? Because that would definitely be something to mark. And he's asking anything you would recommend, I guess, diet-wise, to kind of maintain his kidney function.
Yeah. So he's targeting specifically creatinine, which is understandably like that's a big question for pretty much every kidney patient because creatinine, that rise in creatinine is part of the indication of kidney damage. Creatinine is a normal waste product that our body creates from metabolism and from muscle changes. So it's the kidney's job to get rid of that creatinine. And then if it doesn't, that's when it builds up in the blood. So the question of reducing that is there is some diet aspects related to creatinine, but not entirely. There are a lot of other factors that are not in our control, such as our natural muscle mass. And so that we don't want to change. If anything, we want to have more muscle mass to keep our lean body strong and protected. From the diet side, if you're eating a ton of protein, particularly animal protein, eating a little bit less animal protein, switching over to more plant protein, that can potentially help with lowering creatinine. As far as like the amount, again, you want to be really careful going into any kind of lower protein diet, because again, anytime we're cutting back on something, we increase the risk of malnutrition, we increase the risk of other deficiencies popping up. So you want to make sure you get the right amount of protein for yourself. That's enough to be protective for your health. And it's interesting that this comes up right now, because just in the Facebook group earlier this afternoon, we had a question about this recent study that came out talking about how older patients with CKD should be having more protein and what that means compared to the recent recommendations of a lower protein diet. So it's another piece of evidence to basically say, this is all very young, new information, new research that we have that we are still and will continue to be learning from to see what is the best options that we have, and that there is no one set, this is what everybody should be doing kind of renal diet. It's very, very different based on the individual. The elderly population is at a higher risk of malnutrition from not eating enough protein, not eating enough calories, not maintaining their lean body mass. So there are considerations there. And so there is a thought about not reducing the protein to what the KDIGO guidelines say. The low protein diet is more protective for kidneys, saying the elderly population shouldn't be reducing their protein because that is not necessarily the answer, which I do agree with. I don't think it is something that everybody with CKD should just jump onto a low protein diet. It's not always appropriate. It's not always going to be helpful or beneficial. So we do want to be careful with that. That was a lot of stuff to kind of cover in this topic, but I just want to present different ideas and thoughts to say that there are different options. And so talking with your healthcare provider to say, should I be on a lower protein diet? Would that be appropriate for me? Or would that not be, maybe the risk would be too much and it wouldn't necessarily be the right path for me. Maybe we need to go a different route. We need to look at something else. But again, even switching just from plant or animal proteins to plant proteins, not even changing the quantity, keeping like the same grams of protein per day. I have seen plenty of students, plenty of clients have beneficial, successful, improved labs just from making that change and not dropping the amount of protein, but just eating more plant protein can be really, really helpful. So if you have a lot of animal protein in your diet, maybe consider a meatless Monday or do some plant-based meals for your lunches for the week, or do a couple dinner options. Try to add more plant proteins like tofu, tempeh, beans, edamame. Those are going to be really, really great options that do provide a lot of nutrients, a lot of different benefits to, besides just adding the protein in the diet from plants.
Yeah, and James had some great news. So there's no protein in the urine. James, that is fantastic. Protein in the urine is the number one indicator of further decline of kidney function. Also, no diabetes and no blood pressure problems. James, it sounds like you're doing really well. Stay active, eat healthy, and enjoy life. Make some great memories.
Yeah.
Now, and I don't want to mispronounce this. It's William, or it looks like William, but it's spelled a little differently. Says they have protein in their urine. Must they eat less protein because there is some in their urine?
So you would think, right? You're like, oh, well, I'm leaking protein. I've got to replace it, or I've got to get protein in, or maybe the protein is causing problems and that's why it's coming out. So I shouldn't be eating more protein. And in some cases, it's always going to be like a maybe answer. Like, I'm sorry, I can't say flat out yes or no. We just don't have enough information. Working one-on-one with somebody, I can get a better, bigger picture, medical history, food history. I can get all of that. But in these kinds of contexts, it's a maybe kind of answer. And so in one case, it depends on how much protein you're eating to begin with. If you're not eating a ton of protein, it doesn't necessarily mean that eating less means leaking less. However, there is something that a lot of people don't realize is strongly connected, and that is a low sodium diet with protein leaking in the urine, because we do easily get plenty of sodium in our diet, and more sodium can increase blood pressure, which also increases that strain on the kidneys and leaks protein. So by following a low sodium diet, that can be helpful in protecting the kidneys and reducing that protein leaking, especially if you're on medications that are targeted to help reduce the protein in the urine. And so you'll want to talk to your doctor about the medications that are prescribed for you. But if you have those, then a low sodium diet is very important to support the medications so that the medications can do the job that they've been assigned to help reduce the protein in the urine. So I would look really closely at sodium, just because I know that that is such an easy thing to go overboard for a lot of us. Looking at the food labels, looking at nutrition, if we're going out to eat, looking for lower sodium or heart healthy options, those can be good ways to reduce the sodium in the diet and then protect and help potentially reduce that protein leaking.
Yeah, I tell you, my biggest thing to help me reduce sodium was stopping the orders at the drive-through window and the frozen TV dinners, flipping them over and looking. It was shocking. Just this weekend, my kids were looking at some TV dinner, like, Dad, I think you'll like this. And I'd never seen the brand. I flipped it over, and it was 2,300 and something milligrams of sodium in this one little meal. That is more than I'm allowed to have in a day in a tiny meal.
Yeah, those frozen meals can be a lot.
I can't believe they're allowed to sell them. It's like, oh.
Well, and the tricky thing too is that, because I was actually looking at some frozen meals for clients a few weeks ago, and it's a lot of the branding that they talk on the front about, oh, it's, vegetarian or vegan, or, it's got, I don't know, fiber, or really the vegan thing, they push that a lot, they say plant-based. And so like you think, oh, it's going to be healthier, it's plant-based, but they put a lot of they're adding a lot more in there to really kind of hit the taste buds harder. And
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that they don't always identify the sodium. And I see this a lot too on like social media, that people and companies will be saying, oh, this is a plant-based, or this is a great, a lot of protein. A lot of people are pushing protein right now. And they highlight that, but then I look at the information and I'm like, well, wait a minute, this is like half your day's sodium, and it's only giving you 10% of what you need for everything else, and it's not matching up. So, reading the labels is incredibly important. And then for something like a frozen meal, don't forget that you don't have to have it just as is. You can add an extra steam bag of veggies to it, and then split it into 2 meals. So you're actually cutting that sodium in half just by adding more of the vegetables that maybe are already included in it. You're just doubling up on that without the extra salt. That's a really easy option. Or adding some rinsed beans, like just getting a can of beans, draining, rinsing them, because the rinsing does cut down the sodium too. And then you add the beans to that as well. Then you're adding plant protein, you're adding fiber, and you're not adding a lot of salt to it. So there's ways that you can just kind of like zhuzh it up a little bit and make it better, more nutrient dense, give you the calories that your body needs and wants, and then not give it as much of the sodium that the companies are going pretty heavy handed on.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I love those steam bags of frozen vegetables, especially ones that don't have a sauce on them, because then they're reasonable. They're not loaded with a bunch of sodium, and I'll steam them in the microwave, which is very, very convenient. And then a lot of the Dash seasonings, which are without sodium, sprinkle those on there, shake the bag up, and it's delicious. And it's great to add to something. We go through so many of those here.
Yeah, we do too. I mean, Costco, we get the big bag of their frozen broccoli, and then they also have some other like frozen veggie medleys. And I think those ones can have some sodium, but they're not high in sodium.
Yeah, it's always just a little. It's nothing crazy.
Exactly. But I'll literally just, whatever I'm cooking, whatever kind of skillet dish or stir fry or whatever, I just take out that big bag. I get a cup or a scoop or something, and I add a few scoopfuls of those frozen veggies into it. And it's an easy way to add more nutrients, and it's not like it's not melting my brain at the end of the day when I'm like, I just want to make dinner and not have to go through a whole thing about it.
All right, I want to get one more question. We're at the half hour mark, and this is a great one for you with your experience. Dark Man Jeff is currently on PD dialysis and on the transplant list. What should be his priority diet wise?
Oh man, Jeff, I hope you're doing well. I loved and miss all of my dialysis patients, PD patients. I had a special place for because I only got to see them like once or twice a month. They weren't in the clinic all the time like my other patients were. I think PD is a great dialysis modality. And so it's just really great for like traveling options and everything. If you, just as a quick aside, for those of you that have CKD, I really encourage you to educate yourself on learning about dialysis modalities. It's not setting anything in stone, but it's just a matter of like more information is power, and having a better understanding of what's going on, talking to dialysis patients to get different perspectives. It's just a good way to inform yourself and know of options. It's kind of, it's so much better in my perspective from what I've seen with dialysis patients that have come in knowing and making that choice themselves rather than having a choice be kind of pushed onto them because of a health scare or something. So take the time when you're in a calm matter, when you're in a calm state, take the time to learn in a very curious and just interested, like, I just want to know what this is about. It doesn't mean I'm going to be on this type of dialysis ever or in the whatever, but just to learn about it, to be curious and interested. So all of that aside, Jeff, PD, peritoneal dialysis, is a great dialysis that can potentially mean that you need more protein. So it depends on your transporter. If you're a high transporter or low transporter, you might be losing more protein there. So you might have like even more increased protein needs. So talk with your PD dialysis dietitian about your protein needs and if you're on target for that, because protein is quite important. Another factor when it comes to peritoneal dialysis in particular is that it's not likely, I can't say guaranteed, but it's not likely that potassium is a problem, as in a low potassium diet is necessary. But having some more flexibility on potassium is probably an option for you. So taking advantage of potassium, including some potassium-rich foods, can be helpful to get you the nutrients that you need and can help with keeping your blood pressure controlled. Low sodium is going to be pretty much always the recommendation across the different types of dialysis and guidelines. So be careful with your salt. And then lastly, phosphorus. Phosphorus is harder for PD patients to eliminate. So you might have to talk with your dietitian about balancing out the phosphorus in your diet. Phosphorus in your diet with your phosphorus binder prescription. So you might need to adjust that. Just remember that phosphorus binders, they're like sponges. They can only hold so much water or phosphorus until they need to be taken out and wrung out. So if you're eating more foods, more phosphorus, you might need more phosphorus binders to compensate, to take care of that phosphorus, which is totally your choice and totally doable. But talk with your team about, is my phosphorus binder amount, is that the appropriate amount? Is that the appropriate dose, the appropriate type of binder for the phosphorus in my diet and what we see in my labs? So there we go.
Excellent. And he says his potassium's on the low side. So he's
Yeah.
similar to me, eating potatoes frequently, avocados, bananas, all friendly. Though I do know that strike that they're having at the port is going to make bananas very expensive and hard to find. So too bad you can't stock up on those. They don't have a long shelf life.
Well, you know what I did? I had some bananas going, turn a little dark. I have a tiny ice cube tray. The ice cubes are literally like a tablespoon size. And I mashed I mashed the bananas. And then I put them into this little ice cube tray. So I had little banana ice cubes for smoothies instead of freezing like a whole banana or something. But now I have mashed bananas, and then, cooking, baking, whatever, could be used later. So it's just kind of an easy way to preserve it. And I thought, why not? But our freezer did go out over the weekend, so lost all of it. But, that's what happens.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jen, for being here today, helping give all this great information. Thank you, everyone out there. Now, Jen is here at the beginning of every month. Right now, it's been the first Tuesday of every month. We're working on an earlier time starting next month. So keep an eye on the Facebook page for Dadvice TV. Also, make sure you've joined. I'm gonna bring your QR code back up here. Go to Plant Powered Kidneys, to Facebook group. Go to the Plant Powered Kidneys website. Right there is a QR code you can scan. It'll take you right to Jen's amazing, great, helpful website. Lots of fantastic articles. And then make sure join her Facebook group. I was just on there before our call today, and I saw someone who took a lot of pictures of this thing they made with pineapple. And I was very interested. I'm like, what is this? How's he doing this? And she put all the information in there. And I found that very, very interesting, because over the weekend, I took my daughter and my son to a restaurant over in Windsor, Canada. And my daughter gets this half of a pineapple that they carve out and they fill with yogurt and fruit. And it looks amazing. And she just absolutely loves it. Of course, I eat some of it too.
Yeah.
So I'm always interested in things with pineapple, because I've began to like it. So that's fantastic. All right, everybody, I will be back sometime soon with Dr. Rosansky. We haven't nailed down the date yet, but that's coming. Also have some more things I'm going to try to plan later this month. Thanks for sitting through and listening to my voice, everyone. I know it's a little bit rough, but believe me, it's so much better than what it was just a week ago. And thanks again, Jen, and we'll see you all next time. Bye, everyone.